On this week's Gridiron Report, we have both Michigan and Michigan State making it to the Sweet 16. MSU is Big Ten hockey's first ever back-to-back regular season and tournament champs, and playoff basketball is officially back here in Detroit. So let's get into it.
In the heart of the city where the lights grow dim, grit and grind every inch, every rim. From the underdogs rising to the legends that win. It's the Gridiron Report, let the games begin. Every highlight's a journey, roads paved with fire, sweat, tears, and hustle that never expire. From the rookies on the rise to the old hands retire, Gridiron is the place for fans to conspire. Hustle on blast, beats thundering loud. Champions are born from the roar of the crowd. The Gridiron Report, where the stories are proud. Tune in, bring the heat.
Welcome to the Gridiron Report, your Lions First All Detroit Sports podcast. Today is Wednesday, March 25th, and we're lucky enough that we can continue to talk about both the Michigan State Spartans and the Michigan Wolverines in relation to the big dance. Majority of our episode, we'll be talking about college basketball, a little miscellaneous stuff at the end, but first and foremost, I mean, it is getting towards the end of March. Kyle, what are your overall thoughts on just March Madness and this tournament in general?
I love March. I mean, I think it's the best weekend of the year. You can cancel me if you want. I know there's a lot of people who think there's other sports weekends that are better. In my opinion, this is best weekend of the year. And, a lot of people are saying that, this tourney has been a bit boring. There was quite a bit of chalk going on, quite a bit of favorites winning. And I think that those people, they absolutely have a point, right? This is the first time that I can remember, and maybe ever, I think I saw a stat, that there wasn't a single upset of a number 1, 2, 3, or 4 seed in the round of 64. All of those teams won their first games. And so you love to see, upsets, Cinderellas, especially in that first weekend. We didn't see that. So yeah, maybe a bit boring, but I know that the ratings were skyrocketing. So people were still tuning in. Y'all were still watching. You can complain about it, but there were a few upsets. McNeese State over Clemson was a really fun one on, I think it was on that Thursday. So the first day that the games were tipping. Arkansas, a couple days later, they took down St. John's in the round of 32. So really big upset. St. John's obviously had a tremendous year, winning the Big East and 2 seed in the tournament. And a lot of people had them, picked to be the Final Four or going further than that. So that was a really big upset. And credit to Cal and Arkansas. Not the biggest fan of Cal. I've said it a couple times, but you got to respect him. He really has these boys playing well at Arkansas. So few upsets overall, a lot of chalk. I'm a guy who loves upsets. I know you watch. I mean, people watch March Madness because they want to see the Cinderellas. They want to see the upsets. Even your random 8 seed who takes down a 1 seed. That's really why people tune in. So we didn't see that, but overall, I think it was a great tournament. And I was, at least for the first weekend, I was really consumed with both Michigan and Michigan State basketball. Both teams advanced to the Sweet 16, so pumped for that. Obviously, pumped for my Spartans. Pumped for, I got a lot of buddies who are U of M fans as well, so certainly good on them. But I think overall, I mean, what are your thoughts on this weekend?
Yeah, I think it was great. I think everyone knew kind of it was going to be pretty chalk. Everyone, I mean, at least myself, I was filling out our brackets, and it's boring, but I think I had all 4 number 1s in the Final Four. I had most 2s in there. I mean, it was just naturally, I don't know if it's related to the NIL or, just all these coaching changes we've had for the last few years. The parity is in this tournament is stark. And I think I kind of was expected. Now, I will say that as much as a little upset we had, I think we've had some pretty good games, at least for a little bit. It seems like at least some of these teams are being tested a little bit. And then towards the end, the bigger, better team ends up, blowing them out. And it was, the score wasn't really vindictive of what the overall game was. And that's still, it's, you're not getting the buzzer beaters like we got on the Colorado State game, but you're still getting good basketball. And, but I will say, I feel like neither Michigan State nor Michigan really was blessed with, getting a blowout win or anything. We're seeing these teams end up winning by 20, 30. Duke's winning by 40. Michigan State didn't get either of that. So let's just jump right into our teams. So obviously we have both teams to review their game and then do a little bit of a preview. So let's start with Michigan. We'll start with the Wolverines. First and foremost, beating UC San Diego 68-66. We talked about it last week. This was a game that a lot of people, a lot of sharks, a lot of talking media heads, they had as their trendy upset, and for good reason, right? We talked about, if you want to tune into our preview from that game, check out last week's episode, but UC San Diego, while it was their first time in the dance, they turn you over a lot. They don't turn the ball over themselves that much. They get to the free throw line really well. Like there's a lot of things that Michigan really doesn't pair up very well against. So it made sense that it was a trendy game. But I mean, just watching the game, at least the first half, Michigan came out and they didn't give a shit what you thought about, your prediction, the upset. Michigan looked fantastic in that first half. They opened the game on a 10-0 run and were really just dominant the entire time. End up leading by 15. It was a late game, so I feel like a lot of people end up going to bed at halftime. The second half was kind of a different story. The turnovers really began to pile up for them. I think UC San Diego, their best player, obviously fouled out with I think 7 minutes left. And even before then, he really wasn't getting much going. UC San Diego, they couldn't really buy a bucket for most of the first half.
Mm-hmm.
But as the second half ended up going on, like I said, the turnovers started to pile up again. The Tritons, I think they're the Tritons, ended up making a little bit of a run. But Michigan really tampered any sort of. It was close at the end. They would finish on a 17-3 run and end up for the win. So it's kind of, in my opinion, a tale of two halves, which we've seen from the Spartans all season. It's just been the opposite. We started slow and finished well. They kind of did the opposite. They started really well, and then slowly UC San Diego ended up getting back into it. But they come away with the win, 68-66. Move on to Texas A&M, who you're obviously familiar with living down in Texas. You know a lot of guys that are A&M Aggies and the cult that they are. For that one, it was mostly the Danny and the Vlad show. I think they both performed really, really well. It's been really that all season, and that's their bread and butter, right? That's when they do their best offensive work, is when you're running the ball through them. Danny finished with 14, Vlad finished with 23. Other than those two, the real kind of X factor for Michigan in the Wolverines A&M game was Roddy Gale. Roddy Gale has been someone that obviously transferred from Ohio State. He's caught a lot of flack this season for being underwhelming, for at times being a borderline unplayable. The Spartans have had guys just like that, but Roddy Gale, a lot of people owe Roddy Gale an apology because he came out big, had 26 points, 4 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal, was 4 from 6 from 3. Like, out of nowhere, and that's what gets you far in March when you have those random guys go off and can catch fire. That out of nowhere, like, I didn't expect this guy to do so well. That's the games and the guys that make you go on. So they end up winning 91-79. From that one, they were only 27% from 3. I have pulling up their numbers against. I don't have their numbers in front of me for their first game where they were from 3, but 27% from 3 against the A&M, so not super great there. But 43% from the field, and they rebounded the ball like crazy. Kind of played like a Michigan State game. So, what are your thoughts on the Michigan's 2 games there?
Yeah, I think the first one, just real quick, the UC San Diego game, you mentioned that it was their first game in the NCAA tournament, right? I think this is their first year they were eligible as a D1 team. You could tell the boys came out and they were nervous. Like physically, you could see that they were noticeably nervous. And credit to them, they did settle in as the game progressed. Yeah, it would be easy for them, to just roll over. I think they were down as much as like 15 first half into the second half. I give a lot of credit to those kids for fighting back and making it a good game. Michigan ended up closing it out, 68-66. And I think that they did hear a lot of talk from the media, from people picking their brackets, picking UC San Diego as like the darling 12 seed over the 5 seed. And so I give Michigan a lot of credit for kind of blocking out that noise and really taking care of business. It was a tight game. Vegas knew it was going to be a tight game, and they got it done. And then we were talking about the A&M game, and kind of the opposite happened. A&M actually was controlling that game into the second half. Hit, I think, an and one to go up 10, and at that point, this was probably 15 minutes left in the second half. I was thinking that A&M was probably going to cruise. And really credit to Michigan. I think from that point on, that 15-minute mark, around that 15-minute mark in the second half, Michigan ripped off a 42-19 run to end the game, and they ended up, winning by 16 points there. And a huge credit to Roddy Gale there, who I think he went on a 10-0 run on his own or something really close to that. Yeah, he was a huge reason why, they had a lot of success. Obviously, the 2 7-footers played pretty well. As well. But I give Michigan a ton of credit. This was another game. They were dogs in this game. A&M was favored by about 2.5 points. Again, I think Michigan probably hears a little bit of that noise, and they didn't let it get to them even down 10. And I give them a lot of credit. And that's kind of the resilience that you need to show, especially in March, to win these games, because college basketball in general, but especially college basketball, it's a game of runs. I mean, these kids can go 10 minutes without hitting a field goal seemingly. So you're always in the game, but you got to keep your heads in it. And I think it would have been really easy for Michigan to just kind of turtle and, go away with a round of 32 exit. And yeah, to their credit, they've been really awesome at, making it to Sweet 16s, and they did it again. So huge credit to them.
I think we talked about it a few weeks ago. Like, Tom Izzo was easily the Big Ten Coach of the Year. I in that week's episode, I put him up for, I thought he'd be in contention for Coach of the Year. Since the tournament started, you just mentioned it, Dusty May has been the Big Ten Coach of the Year since the tournament started. He's been fantastic. And Michigan in general, like you said, has been really, really good in the tournament recently. I don't have the number in front of me, but it's like, they seem like every year they're fighting and scratching and clawing their way at least to the Sweet 16, and they're randomly going beyond. So credit to them. They've been fantastic. They're finding ways to win. Like I said, the guys are stepping up that they need to in order to get those wins outside of their original guys that really got them there. And so, they play Auburn on Friday, 9 p.m. at night. Auburn currently is favored, at least when I put together the show notes. I don't know what it actually is right now. Auburn was favored by 8.5. So it might have changed 8.5. So it's still there. We kind of covered, you kind of covered Auburn last week just because they were in our bracket, and there's a potential that one of us would go up against them. So you covered them pretty well last week. So if you guys are interested in the Auburn preview and what we think of their team, you can go back to last week's episode and listen. But they're an older team. I think we said that what their starting five is older than Oklahoma City Thunder's starting five in the NBA, which is just crazy. So it'll be really interesting. I like that Auburn team, but they're definitely one of the most beatable number one seeds, in the tournament still remaining. So it'll be really interesting. If there's any team that can claw their way through it right now, playing as they are, it's Michigan. So again, that game is at 9:40 on Friday. Auburn currently favored by 8.5. The other team that we have obviously is the Michigan State Spartans. They opened up against Bryant on Friday. They won that game 87-62. So I'll just start with my thoughts. I don't know about you. I felt like that game was a lot closer than that score, shows for 70% of that game.
I was literally never worried for 1 second.
And we'll get to the New Mexico game as well, but you weren't worried in that one either. We were texting about it. I was worried in both of them. I feel like Michigan State did what they did all season, and like at halftime, they went down a little bit in the first half. Suddenly, you felt like, I don't know, in March the team could use this momentum and pull that upset. And then they did exactly what they've done all season. In the second half, they battened down the hatches, played some hard-nosed defense, and ended up winning, like I said, 87-62. But the defense was just absolutely fantastic. They held Bryant to 20% from three, and they just vastly out-rebounded them, 54-29. So they just played Michigan State basketball that they've played all season, and end up coming away with the win. But I was more worried about that one. Again, you weren't, right?
No, I wasn't super worried. I was just seeing the entire game. Bryant, it's not like they were shooting the lights out. They were hucking up threes, and most of them were not going in. So I knew it was only a matter of time before Michigan State would kind of extend the gap in the lead. And I just knew that, Bryant as a team, they didn't have the firepower. If they were hitting threes, I would have been a lot more worried, but they certainly didn't. I don't have the stats up in front, but they were just hucking up threes left and right, missing a bunch of them. So not super worried. I think just one huge shout out. Of course, the boys played really well overall, 87 points as a team, but I was so impressed with Cohen Carr, and his stat line was awesome. I think what he does that, doesn't necessarily translate to the stat line is equally as important. It seems like he comes into that game, any game that he is in, and he just he's like the spark plug. He is, the guy that he clearly wants to be out there, and he's hustling, and he's, to his credit, he's an athletic specimen. I think he's one of the fastest guys on any court that he steps in. And of course he can jump higher than anyone else, but it seems like he is always hustling for loose balls that are going out of bounds. It seems like he's always making those little plays that don't necessarily show up on a stat sheet, but damn it, I'm watching and I'm like, this kid can absolutely ball. Not taking anything away from the rest of the Spartans, because we know that as a team, they do hustle. They do get down for balls. But it seems like Cohen Carr just does it at such a tremendous clip. He comes off the bench, and he just gives you that spark. Points on 7 of 10 shooting, so extremely efficient. He was also 4 of 5 from the free throw line. We could probably talk about free throws. As a team, easily regressing, and that's it's not great to see. But Cohen Carr has gotten so much better from the free throw line. It just seems like he is so much more confident. He's shooting a few threes as well, but really his bread and butter is slashing, really getting up there for oops. So just loved how he played. But overall, I mean, I just thought the boys played really well. They got it done. And you mentioned that. Where are the blowouts? The Dukes of the world blowing out teams by 30. I mean, 87-62. I would consider that a blowout, and I think the boys played really well.
It didn't feel, I don't know, just for me, it didn't feel like it for most of that game. I agree. The score, it indicates a blowout. It didn't feel like that. I don't know.
Good teams win, great teams cover.
Yeah.
This team did both.
I mean,
back-to-back days.
Cohen Carr is fantastic. It was so fitting that Brian's Barstool Twitter account, whatever, I'm surprised they even have one, but their Twitter account kind of came at Cohen Carr a little bit and just just sent a picture of him and was just like, we're supposed to be afraid of this guy who averages like 7 and 3 or something like that, which is true. I mean, he's not like a menacing guy, but he kind of sneakily will give his team his energy. Like you just said, he's going for the loose balls. He's doing the alley-oops, getting the crowd on their feet. And then he goes out and just like shatters his career highs after they specifically called him out. Like it could not have been more fitting. Yeah, he played absolutely fantastic. So they ended up beating Bryant by quite a bit. I agree. The score does indicate a blowout. I don't know. I just didn't feel like it was until like the end. Then I was like, okay, whatever. But then moving forward, Michigan State then beat New Mexico 71-63. Again, you just got like balls of steel, man. I don't know. You were not worried about this at all. I was worried. Just in the first like 5 minutes, they had let me pull up the guy's name. I mean, he let's see, Amzil on New Mexico came out, and I think he was a perfect 5 for 5 or something, including like 2 or 3 3-pointers. Like, I don't know, this guy averages like 9 points a game, and he comes out in the first 5 minutes, he has like 13, and it's stuff like that'll get you bounced in big time. I just mentioned it when we were talking about Michigan. It's the guy that you don't really expect that can suddenly catch fire. He's the guy that on the other team you need to be worried about, and if you're going to win and make it far, you need those guys. So I was worried about it.
Yeah, no, I wasn't super worried. I mean, in the second half, all right, I probably did get a little worried there when it was still kind of tight. But first half, I'm like, this is a second half team. I mean, we see it time and time again, so I wasn't super worried there.
I mean, like you said, it was second half team. The first half, we couldn't buy a bucket. So we were 26% from 3. So, I mean, just really brutal. But the same thing kind of happened that we saw all season. The bench came to play. They stepped up. They were really, really, really honestly carrying this team. The rebounding really got it done for us. Both the teams we went against, in Bryant and New Mexico, they both kind of did the same thing that Michigan State likes to do. They like to rebound the ball. They like to get out and run. And we just kind of really outplayed them in our own game and at their own game, essentially. But Frankie Fiddler, shout out Frankie Fiddler. He kind of had a rough last few weeks of the season. I know we were really tough on him, saying, at least once in this episode, mentioned that he was kind of unplayable at the time. He was really good out of nowhere down the stretch. Trey Holloman was still really, really good. He's been really good all season. Jaden Akins has really turned that corner since like the midway of the season. I feel like when we're starting to get the momentum, he can hit a 3 in transition and force a timeout to be called. So it's fantastic. But the one guy I want to point out, and we talked about Cohen was great in both games. Cohen Carr was great in both games. But this one against the Lobos, I loved what Jeremy Fears was doing. Jeremy Fears was not dominating in the stat book, but he was dominating that game and controlling it so perfectly. You could see every single time he got the ball. And if I'm the other team, I would be furious that we were playing a guy like this. But he played it so every time he got the ball, he was going out and finding the Lobos' best players who we already kind of were in foul trouble. He was going out and finding them and getting them, and not like foul baiting, but getting them in positions and compromising positions and forcing them to foul. It was so fantastic. I mean, and that's really a main reason why I think we were able to pull it out in the end, in that the Lobos' best player, Donovan Dent was kind of taken out of it. He wasn't able to get into really any real big groove. But Nelly Jr. Joseph, who's easily one of their best players, still finished with 16 points, but he fouled out with 5-6 minutes left in the game. And that's because Jeremy Fears had like this strategic game on a string. So I thought it was incredible, especially in a game where Jace Richardson just didn't have it. After the game, they interviewed him, and he was like, yeah, I sucked today, in my opinion. Like, so shout out the boys for carrying us. He finished with 6, and both of his 3-point plays came down the stretch when we really needed him to. But it's a good sign when you can win without your star player like that going, he's like an 18-point per game kind of guy, and finished with just 6 all in the last few minutes. So they end up getting it done again. That was 71-63.
Yeah. It was a fun game, and yeah, it did get tight down the stretch. And I was certainly puckering up a little bit more nervous there. There was such a good point that you bring up with Jeremy. Yeah, if you look at his stat line, I mean, he didn't make a shot from the field. I think he was 0 for 2. But I mean, what he does, I mean, there's a reason why his nickname is the Floor General. He really was just such a commanding presence when he has the ball. That's what you need out of your point guard, especially in March. He's such a smart player. He knows how to drive, how to draw fouls. He obviously, they have a really good scouting report of New Mexico. He knows their best players. They're playing the entire game. He obviously knows. And I think one point in particular, and I think this might have been the foul on New Mexico's big man, who actually he fouled out of the game at that point, at about that 7-minute mark that you mentioned. But it was a made basket from New Mexico. Fears immediately is getting the ball inbounded extremely quickly, and he's pushing it. He knows that this 7-footer is trying to also get back on defense. Completely baits him into fouling him. It was a foul. There's really no denying it. But it was all because of Jeremy just pushing that envelope, especially right getting that transition bucket. I thought they were outstanding at creating transition buckets, especially off made baskets, which is extremely hard to do. Most of the time when you think of transition, it's off missed baskets. But Michigan State is so good at doing this when the opposing team makes a basket, and a lot of times it creates an easy bucket on the other end, which curbs some momentum. So it's really, really outstanding. Loved what I saw from Fears. And you mentioned Jace Richardson. Yeah, he was horrendous, and he was, he's the first person to tell you that he was really bad. But he kept his head up, and to Tom Izzo's credit, of course, he knows what Jace can do. This team knows what Jace can do. Yeah, averaging 17 or 18 points since being inserted in the starting lineup this year. And of course, they're going to continue to go to their guy. Like, the entire team was telling him, keep shooting. You're getting open looks. We know that you can hit these. You're just having an off night. And to Jace's credit, he keeps his head up and, makes 3 huge free throws after getting fouled shooting a 3. And then it just a gigantic and 1 putback for another 3-point play. So yeah, down the stretch when they needed him most, he keeps his head up. He's not pouting. He's not saying this is my off night, whatever. He's still going to get a bucket for you. And it was 6 huge points down the stretch. So just love the resilience that I saw from Jace in an off day for him.
Yeah, so Michigan State they play Ole Miss on Friday, 7 p.m. Michigan State is currently favored by 3.5 points at the moment. So we can just do a quick hitter on Ole Miss. As we've kind of done with all these teams, we're not going to sit here and pretend like we've watched every Ole Miss game. But I've done a little bit of research. So really, the main guy that we want to try and stop is going to be Sean Padula. I think that's how you pronounce it. So right now he's riding a 2-game, 20-point streak. He's their only all-conference player. He's the 3rd team all-SEC. They're a very small team, so it's very different than the last team we've played. I think it was actually Bryant was one of the top 3 largest teams in the country. So this is kind of the opposite. They are a very, very small team. They really struggle against physical post presence. So I think that kind of really meshes well against Michigan State because we have at least our 3 big guys who can bang on the block down there. And then you also throw in Cohen Carr, who's not considered a big guy, but he is a physical presence down there, and you can throw him and slash to the basket. So they're very vulnerable to that. They allow a ton of free throws. So you just mentioned, and you mentioned a few times, the free throw issues that we've had. Michigan State was a fantastic free throw shooting team for most of the season, and we were actually pretty lucky that a lot of our big guys were leading the way with free throws and the amount of times they get to the line. For some reason, since the beginning of February, we've been terrible. I think every single person has gone down in free throw percentage, except for Cohen Carr, who you obviously mentioned. And some of them really poorly, like going down 20% and stuff like that. So if we're going to use that to our strength there, they allow a ton of free throws. We've got to be able to hit from the line. This recent slump needs to stop. Chris Beard, obviously, he coaches the Ole Miss Rebels. Chris Beard is someone that we've come across in the past. He has bested us before in March Madness. He's a defensive-minded guy. His defenses are always very stifling, so it'll be really difficult. It'll be interesting to see whose defense is going to basically out-defend the other guys. Michigan State obviously has a really good defense. So you have Sean Padula again, Jamin Brakefield, who bounced Michigan State. I think it bounced Michigan State. At least he used to play for Duke back in 2020, so he's a transfer. He's averaging 11 points. Really 1 through 5 on their team. Can hit threes, and by can hit threes, I mean they are a 30% or above 3-point shooter. Last week against Iowa State, they shot 57% from 3. So they're really a real big 3-and-D team, but they don't have much size. So if Michigan State can really, again, limit the 3-pointers that are made on the opposing team or on the perimeter, which they've done all season. I think they're number 1 or number 2 in the country at opposing 3-point percentage, and then just get to the line, use that physicality, use the height that they have down low. I think we'll be okay. And on top of that, it's just impossible that J.S. Richardson has back-to-back, poor games. I think he'll pick it up a little bit, take some pressure off of guys, like Trey Holloman, like Jaden Akins, and get back to his normal, at least double-digit scoring self. So I like the matchup. What do you think about this upcoming matchup on Friday?
Yeah, I'm pumped overall. You mentioned that Ole Miss played exceptionally well against Iowa State. Yeah, shooting 57% from 3. I think Iowa State, to their credit, over the course of the season, they're a great defensive team. They're top 10 in KenPom. So if Ole Miss does that again, I think they're going to be very, very hard to beat. And they're a very hot team right now. And in March, especially Sweet 16 onwards, you're going to run into hot teams. I mean, essentially every team is hot at that point, right? So yeah, I'm certainly nervous. Just looking at Ole Miss, just on paper, 24th in KenPom in offense, 21st in defense. So yes, they're beatable, but they are playing extremely well right now. And I really respect them as a team. They play awesome defense, like you mentioned. I think that these two teams are pretty similar. Emphasis on defense. Very similar paces. I think that, they don't shoot lights out, although Ole Miss does shoot better than Michigan State does, to their credit. And, just looking at the Vegas point spread, this is the closest spread among Sweet 16 games. So, or at least on Friday. I'm not sure if I looked on Thursday, but at any rate, this is going to be a tight game. And I know it's going to be nerve wracking. And if I wasn't nervous for the previous 2 games, you can bet your ass I'm going to be nervous for this one. But it's the Sweet 16 and it's March. And, you made it to the second weekend. I think that's probably a baseline goal for a lot of Spartan fans. Especially late in this season, maybe not at the beginning of the season if you asked, but certainly as the season went on, I think it was Sweet 16 or bust. They're favored. I think that they should win, but it's going to be an awesome battle, and I can't wait for it, man.
It'll be important because if you remember to the first round, it was Ole Miss versus UNC. Ole Miss had UNC dead to rights. They were down by I don't have it in front. I think it was like at least 15 points, upwards maybe 20. And then slowly UNC started chipping away that. And they were so close to coming back and winning that game. So it'll be important if, the normal Michigan State team that we've grown accustomed to all season comes out and they're slow in the first half. Ole Miss kind of builds up that lead. It'll be important to just keep fighting throughout the end of to the exact end of the game, because we've seen in this tournament exactly that Ole Miss is susceptible to slowly start losing that lead and being chipped away at, especially if we start getting out in transition. If you watch that game, that's exactly how UNC ended up coming back in that game. They kept pushing the pace and getting it down low and getting the quick baskets on the block. So it'll be important if we do get down fast and by quite a bit in the first half, let's just keep playing our game, come back, and I think we'll have a good chance. So, it's just a great time of year. March Madness is the absolute best. We talked about this off pod. But I think you mentioned at the beginning of the pod, this is top 4 best times of the year, right?
Yeah, it's top 4. For me, it's top 1, and a lot of people will dispute it and say, the first red zone NFL. As much as I love that, and I obviously love watching Scott Hansen, it's less special to me. Just because you have a very long NFL season, it's a grind. You have weeks 1 through 18, and then you got playoffs after. What I love about March Madness, it's so special because you might only have one game. If your team gets bounced, yeah, you're done, buddy. So just being able to survive in advance and make it to that second weekend, I think that's what makes that first weekend so special to me and so exciting. And you see some Cinderella stories, maybe not so much this year, but seems like there's always a Cinderella, and so it's so awesome. And I look forward to it every year. And just having that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, you just watch 50 hours of basketball. It's the Office meme of Kevin and Jim and Pam, and they're going up the elevator. How was your week, Kev? Good. I watched 50 hours of college basketball. That was literally me over the weekend, and I'm excited. I'm ecstatic about it. So yeah, for me, it's number 1.
So if they're number 1, do real quick top 4. Just do the top Rushmore. So they're number 1. What about 2, 3, and 4?
2, okay, off the dome. 2 is going to be that first red zone NFL Sunday. Yeah. It's outstanding. You're in early fall, late summer. Maybe get 18 holes in and then go watch red zone afterwards. I'm trying to think. I mean, I don't know. For me, yeah, it's got to be another NFL weekend, possibly wild card, just because there's a ton of games. Wild card and divisional round. I love that there's games on. Yeah, I think Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. I think conference championship is up there if your team's in it. Just 2 games, but they mean the world trying to get to the Super Bowl. I'm probably missing some other sports. I think like NBA, NHL. It's for me like it's just that it's not as special as what we're getting in the NFL or in college basketball. But yeah, that's where my thoughts are. But yeah, what about you?
I mean, okay, I agree. The number 1 and number 2 are, although they're the same, but I'm not going to put them 1 and 2. I'm going to say 1A is the first weekend of March Madness. 1B is the first Red Zone Sunday. I mean, that's still the same 9-hour. I'm watching 7 hours of commercial-free football, and then even a few hours after that. So that's easily 1A, 1B, and then after that, I think I got to go opening days number 3. I just love it, and that's probably it's right around the March Madness. It's right around the weather getting better. I love MLB. I love outdoor baseball, stuff like that. So it's got to be opening day. And then 4, I think this might be a hot take, but I'm going to say my 4th is Thanksgiving football, like a Thanksgiving Thursday NFL slate. I think that's just like compare it with all the food. It's usually great. The Lions are playing. You got the Cowboys that are probably losing as well. So I think that's got to be my 4th. I think that might be a little bit of a sleeper take. And I'm sure, again, I'm sure we're missing a few in there, but that's going to be my 1, 2, 3, 4. But
all right.
Yeah, so that's really it. The only other thing college basketball-wise, we had the portal open on Monday. So if you're listening to this on Wednesday, it's a few days ago. As of recording, we record Tuesday nights, there's already 700 players that have entered the portal in just around 24 hours. 700 different players, including players that are already in or are still in the tournament, in the NCAA tournament. So I want to just real quick, before we transition to some hockey stuff, I want to put on my old man hat for a little bit and just talk about like how the system is so screwed up in that it's the same way in college football in that the portal opens before a lot of everyone have played their bowl games, in that you don't even get the chance to finish out your season before you are either thinking about like who we're going to add to this team, who we're going to lose to this team. If you're a player, what team am I going to go to? Am I going to be too late for this team? If they are going to target a guy. You look at Michigan basketball right now. We just mentioned how Michigan basketball is maybe one of the hottest teams, at least one of the hottest higher seed teams. And they had a guy enter the transfer portal yesterday, and Scottie Pippen's son, I think it's Justin Pippen, isn't it? His name? Like you're not out of the tournament yet, and you're going up against the number 1 seed, but you're still playing really well, and they're a vulnerable number 1, and your mind is on the portal. So I want to just put my old man hat on for a second and just say like the system has to be fixed, man. Tom Izzo was asked about it earlier today. I just saw this before we jumped on. Asked about the portal and what he thinks about the timing and stuff, and he gave the most Tom Izzo like perfect old man response, and he was like, I don't give a shit about that portal. Like, don't ask me about the portal. I'm here putting every single ounce of energy I have into my players who have fought their ass off to get to this point, and just to make sure that we get to practice tomorrow. And when that game comes and go, we get to practice the day after. So it's so terrible how they do this. Like, it's 700 players in 24 hours entering the portal. It's brutal.
Yeah, and I have no idea why college basketball is doing it this way with the portal, opening up right now when teams are still playing.
Makes no sense.
What is that extra couple of weeks going to do? I do get it from football just because you have that winter or spring semester coming up, and so December rolls around and your season may or not be over, but you do have to enroll in classes. I mean, these are student athletes at the end of the day. I know a lot of them are taking gen eds and they're going to the league, so they don't really care about it. But I mean, if you want to be on campus at the start of January, you kind of have to be in that portal in December. So that makes it a little bit tough from a college football perspective. For basketball, I have no idea. I just don't get it. I mean, you have obviously you want the guys in, summertime, getting ready for the next fall, but I don't get why this extra week or 2 would even matter. So yeah, I'm sure there's a reason. I'm sure one of our listeners might, if you do have a reason, hit us up on, Twitter at Gridiron Report 1. And you can tell us why we're wrong, but I just don't get it.
And it can work. I mean, you look at Michigan's team, at least 4 of their starting 5 didn't start their college careers at Michigan, if not all 5 of them. So like it can work. But then you look at Purdue, their starting 5 all started at Purdue. Michigan State, all but 1 started at Michigan State. So like it can work either way. It's just like, it makes no sense. And I do know the reason is money. And in one way, I don't know the exact reason, but it all comes down to money. So I had to put my old man hat on for a second, yell at some clouds there, get on my soapbox and just say like, NCAA, be better. Let's fix this. Like I said, if you want to do that football wise, I get it. Like you said, because of classes and all that stuff, it still is terrible, but I kind of get it. Just push us 2 weeks, push it a week. It makes no sense. But so that's it for college basketball. Hopefully we have one more episode to review and preview and not just reviewing the games. So Michigan and Michigan State. Real quick, before we transition, do you want to see Michigan, as a Michigan State fan, do you want to see Michigan in the Elite Eight, or do you want to not have to play them 3 times?
Dude, 1,000% I want to see Michigan. It's no slight to them. It's not like I'm going to, just say, yeah, we're going to dog walk them. I think that spread would be pretty tight, probably MSU by, guess that line, maybe 1.5, 2.5 tops. But yeah, I mean, I just think that they're so much beatable than the other team there, Auburn. I mean, I think the spread Auburn versus Michigan State, it's at least Auburn by like 5.5. So, I mean, you're looking at who you want to play. Now, I will say, if it's Michigan State in the Elite Eight, that game will take decades off my life.
It's going to get chippy.
Might not survive through it, and it will get extremely chippy. But just looking at the two teams, I absolutely want to play Michigan more. I mean, it would be such a special game too. I'm almost positive these teams have not met this late into the tournament. So yeah, I mean, feed me Michigan, and I think it would be a bloodbath. And I'm not going to sit here and lie and say, oh, it's going to be an easy dub. It's going to be an absolute bloodbath. But I would very much rather play Michigan than play Auburn. I just think Auburn's a much better team.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, that's very fair. I agree. I think Michigan is extremely hot at the moment, and it's just hard to beat a team 3 times in a row. But it'll be great for content. So we'll have, if that is the case, actually, so no matter what, when we have next week's episode, we will only be previewing one team. We can review both games, but we can only preview one team moving forward because, if anything, we'll have knocked each other out. So stay tuned for next week's episode. Let's jump over to some college hockey.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's talk a little hockey, talk a little puck. Michigan State, they continue to be hot. They win the Big Ten tournament for the second year in a row. First, I believe they're the first team, I think you mentioned it earlier on the show, first team to win the Big Ten tournament and the overall Big Ten 2 years in a row. And the Iceman, Isaac Howard, with the game winner, double OT game. It was a gritty game. They ended up beating Ohio State 4-3 with an Isaac Howard game winner. And yeah, man, it was awesome to see. I didn't get to watch the majority of the game, actually. I was out and about, but I did put on a double overtime when I saw that they were still playing. I couldn't believe it. And I got to see the Iceman with the game winner there. So really, really tremendous, and looking forward to the NCAA tournament. So Michigan State, they actually got the number 2 overall seed in the NCAA hockey tournament. So I know some people were up in arms that they should be the number 1 overall seed. I think at the end of the day, we're probably splitting hairs. I think that the draw they got, playing in Ohio versus anywhere else, the East Coast, somewhere in the West Coast. So I do think playing in Ohio really does help. They'll be playing in Toledo, and yep, they will play Cornell in the first round of the NCAA tournament, Thursday, 5:30 p.m. Eastern time on ESPN+. If they win, if they advance, they will play the winner of Ohio State and Boston University in the regional final, with a trip to the Frozen Four on the line. So yeah, I'm just super pumped there. We talked about it a couple different episodes, but being able to see a deep run in the tournament, being able to see a Frozen Four run and potentially more, I think it'd be so awesome for this program. So awesome considering where they were just 3 or 4 years ago to where they are now. Huge shout out to Adam Nightingale, Coach of the Year. In my opinion, it's not even close. Just what he's done getting these boys in game ready. It's been really tremendous to see.
Yeah, I kind of did the opposite. You said you didn't catch much of the game, but you saw in double overtime, so you turned on. I was the opposite. I was watching the beginning of the game, and correct me if I'm wrong, like they went up like 2-0 or something. They went up, and I was like, I feel pretty good about this just based on
2-0
our team and how we've been talking on the show here. And something came up, and I had to run, and I assumed naively that we would end up winning. And then someone in a group chat was like, oh, bad luck there, and like, oh, bad luck again. I'm like, well, shit. And then I saw, I think you texted like doubled overtime, so I was the opposite. But yeah, shout out to the boys. What you said that was on? What day was that on?
That is Thursday. Yep, Thursday, 5:30 your time, ESPN+.
All right. So shout out to the boys. Sticking with the ice, a little bit sadder, maybe a little bit sadder. Coming off a little bit of a high here, and the Red Wings beating the Utah Hockey Club 5-1 last night. But we're still dead, right?
I think they're still dead. Yeah. I mean, if you look at the standings, okay, maybe they have life. They're 3 points back for the second wild card spot. But if you look at a lot of other teams that are, vying for position there, And yeah, it's just, I think a lot of teams are better. There's 3 other teams ahead of the Red Wings for that second wild card spot. The first wild card spot, it seems like it's kind of, it's not even up for grabs anymore. I think they'd be at least like 6 or 7 points behind that one. So of course you never know how it's going to shape up, but just given how hard the Red Wings schedule is throughout the remainder of the season and kind of how they're playing right now, very much up and down. They're kind of getting their ass kicked by teams who are better than them, but still, like they're not really getting any upset wins, and they're kind of dropping some games here and there. So, yeah, I think they're dead. We will check in again next week. It seems like this happens every year that we think they're dead, and then they'll rip off a couple games, and well, they might have life. So, I'm not super optimistic about the Red Wings. I wish that I was, but I'm just being real with y'all.
So they're on life support. We'll make the decision next week here live whether we are pulling that plug, turning off the machines, and letting them go into Bolivian once more. They, I think I read online, it was like they're barreling towards the 4th. If they miss the playoffs, they're barreling towards the 4th longest playoff drought in NHL history, which is, I mean, as such a historic franchise, is such a disgusting thing. Like I almost just threw up my mouth saying it, but it will. So, I mean, if we do pull the plug next week, which we will be, credit to us, we will be the first to do if we need to. It might be interesting to see what kids we bring up. Are we going to bring anyone over from overseas? I know we got a few guys over in Sweden who their season hasn't gone super well, or at least their team season hasn't gone super well. So it'll be interesting to see if they use that time to bring some of the kids up. That seems to be what Stevie Y always is talking about, comparing the farm system and literally never wanting to part ways with our guys. So let's bring them up and see it. If you're doing that, your season is over. So we will check back in next week. We'll take a quick pulse, and we'll see if they are still breathing or if we need to make that decision. Now, one team that is absolutely still breathing over to the hardwood is the Detroit Pistons. So I alluded to it at the beginning of the show. The Detroit Pistons they clinched last week at least a playoff spot for the first time in since 2016 or something like that. Now that game may be a playing game. Still a lot to be decided there with seeding and stuff. Most likely outcome is that Detroit will end up playing likely the Knicks. Kind of depends on how the rest of the games end up falling where they may. It'll be the Knicks, the Bucks, or the Pacers. It'll be one of those 3. I don't know about you. I don't want to play the Pacers. We can do like a whole after March Madness and stuff, and we get towards the playoff. We'll do a whole thing on that. But I don't want to play the Pacers. Miles Turner goes off for 40 against us every time. I want to play the Knicks. We actually played pretty well against the Knicks. Having this Cade on the stage with the New York Knicks in the playoffs would be so fantastic. But for the first time in a decade or so, the Detroit Pistons have locked down a playoff spot.
Yeah, it's huge. And I'm with you on that Pacers. It would be cool just because it's a pretty historic rivalry.
Yeah.
And we kind of all know why, looking at the Malice at the Palace. But that'd be cool. But I do think that the Pacers have the upper hand in that one. So yeah, we can dive into that in future episodes. But yeah, it's huge. This team's playing so well. Sunday marked 40 wins. And I'm going to say this again. On Sunday, the Pistons won their 40th game of the season. They are 2 wins away from tripling their win total from a year ago. No team in NBA history has done this. So, I mean, JB Bickerstaff, coach of the year. We've said it time and time again. He's your coach of the year. And granted, that stat, whatever you want to call it, is a bit cherry picked because in order to triple your win total, you have to be absolute dog shit the previous year. But I mean, to the Pistons' credit, they were absolute dog shit the previous year, and now they are a pretty damn good team. So, yeah, again, JB, coach of the year. I really can't say that enough. So just looking at a couple games they have coming up, the Spurs are in town tonight, Tuesday at time of recording. So by the time this episode is out and you're listening to it, hopefully we're talking about a Pistons dub. But at the very least, heavy favorite. The Pistons are another great opportunity to pick up another win before the Cavs come to town on Friday. And Cavs seemingly never lose. I think they might have just lost last week, but they really don't lose too many games. I think they've ripped off multiple 15-game win streaks this season alone. So that's going to be a tough one, but I think the Spurs game, very much winnable, especially with the Spurs shutting down, seemingly all of their good players. So hopefully you're tuning into this and it's going to be a Pistons dub. But at any rate, 40 wins, and I mean, it's a huge accomplishment. It's something that the team, I'm sure, will be celebrating. They're playing extremely well right now, and that win that they had on Sunday night against the Pelicans, that was without Cade Cunningham or Tim Hardaway Jr. So they're really getting it done, and a lot of the young guys are stepping up too. Ron Holland had, in my opinion, his best game as a Piston. Oscar Thompson played extremely well. So yeah, I mean, they're just getting it done at both ends of the court, and it's awesome to see, man.
Looking at the schedule, like you said, San Antonio, I see this is probably 12 games remaining. I see 3 wins in there that I think we can pretty solid, we can put in the win bracket. San Antonio, I think Toronto, and then either Memphis or Sacramento. So like you split that, or you can come in with 4. So that would put us at 43 and or 44. And you look back at the last week, we definitely dropped one against Washington after you famously came on here and talked so much shit about Washington, and then they punked us.
That's my bad.
And then obviously Dallas, we dropped one at Dallas there. So theoretically, we could have gone 45, 46 wins this year. I mean, it's just incredible. You mentioned this turnaround. It's funny. I just wrote an article last week about the turnaround. The number one largest single season turnaround right now, as it stands, is the 2001-2002 Nets. So they were 26 and 56, which is a winning percentage of 317 in 2001. The next year they went 52 and 30 with a winning percentage of 634 in 2001 and 2002. The Pistons are on pace if they finish the season as we just should, mentioning maybe 3 more wins in the games that you just should win, not stealing anymore, just winning those games. They will break that record of having the largest single season turnaround in NBA history. Even if they don't, they're going to fall at number 2, which is currently held by the 79-80 Celtics. So you already mentioned JB Bickerstaff. He literally cannot get enough flowers from us. It will be interesting, though, as we do come down the stretch, so that we finish the season with the New York Knicks and then the Milwaukee Bucks twice. So those are obviously 3 teams. We're going to end up playing one of those teams probably. And those teams are all plus, like we said, throwing the Pacers in there, we're all going to be kind of vying for seeding. And with Tim Hardaway Jr. going down with that ankle injury, probably going to want to rest him at least into the playoffs. So it'll be interesting to see if any teams start resting their guys. It's a very veteran move to rest your guys as the season kind of comes down in order to have them ready and 100% for the playoffs. You can expect Trajan Langdon and JB Bickerstaff might do something similar with the vets on our team, like the Tobias Harrises and, like I said, the Tim Hardaway, even with his injuries. So it'll be really interesting coming down the stretch. But first things first, you got to take care of business against those teams, like we said. The Spurs, the Grizzlies haven't been very good. The Raptors, you got to take care of business against those guys. So,
yeah, absolutely, take care of business. But at the end of the day, it is looking all too likely that the Pistons are going to get some home playoff games at LCA, and I am just so excited for that. I know you are too. So yeah, that can't come soon enough.
I was in between meetings at work today and just trying to get a busy day, so I was trying to get my mind off of work, and so I just sat down and just started thinking about the perfect Pistons offseason. And I can't tell you how excited I am to do that episode where we just sit down and we're like, all right, this is the money we have. This is who I want us to extend. This is who I want us to target. I laid it all out. I think the money works. I'm not a money guy, but I think the money is going to work. I'll need some, as we get to that time, I'll put it out there and see if some actual money guys can, come back to me and let me know if it absolutely will not work or if it will. But I can't wait for, the season's not even over, and I can't wait for next season. So, shout out everyone involved in that turnaround. It's been so incredible. Really proud of those guys. Cannot wait for playoff basketball here in the great state of Detroit. Or it's great state of Michigan in the city of Detroit. So, let's see what else. Well, let's finish up this show with our grid of the week. So you want to go first?
Yeah, grid of the week. Let's do it. And I'm looking at our show notes. I think we do have the same guy. It's a guy who we talked about on this show, but we're sticking with the hardwood college basketball, March Madness, and I'm going with Coleman Carr. I just think that, he's the spark plug. He's the guy that you need. He's a sophomore, and he's taken such a tremendous step forward this season. He's slowly developing a jump shot, especially a mid-range jump shot, but I think what he can do near the basket is something that only a couple guys in all of college basketball can do. I feel like his vertical, his vertical was like 50 whatever inches, which would be one of the highest in the NBA. So I don't know if they're gonna reevaluate his vertical when if he goes to the combine, if he's going to the league in future years. But the kid can just jump through the roof. In my opinion, best dunker in college basketball. He's had a couple alley-oops and a couple dunk attempts that haven't quite fallen, and I think that they're gonna fall in this Sweet 16 game. And you're going to see the roof explode in Atlanta. I think, we talked about it, 18 points. I think he had 10 boards against Bryant. He was the spark plug. He's one of the reasons why they ended up pulling away. And he's just so fun to watch. So, for me, Cohen Carr, grid of the week. Congratulations, kid.
Yeah, you already mentioned it. We had the same guy for this week. I think watching both games, like I said, I was nervous during both games. In both games, the guy who kind of brought me out of my nerves and I think brought the rest of the team out of the nerves and really got us going was Cohen. I already mentioned it. It was so poetic that they came after him. Of all guys, like, everyone in the country should just be on board with him. Like, he's not like out there, being a menace to society and doing foul baiting and just like pulling up from half court, and he's just throwing down sick dunks. Everyone should be on favor for that. So to see the Bryant Barstool account just go after him for no reason, it was so awesome that he kind of out of it. I mean, what's kind of in a way was kind of true. Like, other teams shouldn't really have to worry about him scoring all that much. But then just to go off like he did was incredible. I think he's, like we said all episode, you need somebody randomly to go off and to carry you when your guys aren't. And he did exactly that. He gets the people going. He, like you said, hasn't really had that moment where like everyone in the stadium is on their feet, like in awe at what he just did. It's definitely coming. I think after against this smaller Ole Miss team, he's definitely going to throw something down that's going to leave jaws on the floor. He's going to absolutely eat. He's going to eat rebounding wise. He's doing everything. There was a play, against the Lobos, in which he dove for a loose ball in the corner and ended up like halfway down the tunnel, almost in the locker room. I mean, the guy has and it was actually as he was going out of bounds, he threw it against the Lobos guy, and we ended up getting the ball. So he has no quit to him. I love what he's doing. He's well deserving of it. And I mean, you teach that guy how to really shoot threes or really get a consistent jump shot down, and he'll be trouble for the Big Ten. So same guy, Cohen Carr. Grid of the week from both of us. Come on the episode, next week's episode. Actually, no, not next week. You got a championship to worry about.
You got to focus.
Yeah, as soon as the season's over, come on the episode. You can bring any trophies or hardware that you may or may not have. We'll chat about how you became such an insane athlete. Maybe I can start replicating some of your exercises and this stuff. You can teach me your ways a little bit. So shout out Cohen Carr, Grit of the week. Okay. That is it for our show. Thank you guys for tuning into this week's episode. You can find Kyle on Twitter at Kyle_Marino. You can find me on Twitter at Dutton_Tyler and at both Piston Powered and Champaign Athletics. You can follow the podcast itself on Instagram at Gridiron Report, on Twitter at Gridiron Report 1. And now you can watch us on YouTube at Gridiron Report as well. I got some sick new headphones so you can tune into the show, watch us, see us, and react. And also, finally, you can join the conversation next week by calling into the Gridiron Report voicemail for us to play and discuss on the podcast. That phone number is 313-679-3939. And if you like this episode, take a moment to rate it 5 stars, give it a review, follow us on all the forms of social. It really helps us build and grow the brand so we can do more content, more stupid Detroit sports stuff for you guys. So thanks for listening this week.
Thanks, y'all. Go green and restore the roar.
A journey, roads paved with fire, sweat, tears, and hustle that never expire. From the rookies on the rise to the old hands retired. Grit iron is the place for fans to conspire. Hustle on, blast beats, thunder and loud. Champions are born from the roar of the crowd. The Gridiron Report, where the stories are proud. Tune in, bring the heat, make your fandom a vow. Make your fandom a vow.